Excuse me. Okay, so today in the book of Job, we have finished the series of speeches that Job was having with his three associates, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They are done speaking, they will not speak again. We had 3 rounds of debates with Job talking to each of these guys. Each of these guys would say something. Job would respond to that guy, and the next guy would say something. Job would respond to that guy, and so on down the line. We did that 3 times. We didn't really say anything new. We basically established the terms of the debate pretty much right from the start. All 4 characters are operating, as time went on, as the 3 debates went on, each party just got more hardened in their position. They didn't really bring anything new to the discussion with each subsequent argument. They were just getting more hardened in their positions, which happens a lot. We can see that a lot in our lives, in our own lives. Anyway, so all 4 men were operating from the same mistaken notion that God always rewards materially rewards the righteous, and materially condemns the wicked. And that happens in this life. Okay, all 4 characters were operating from that baseline assumption. And they refer to it as traditional wisdom, the wisdom of the ages, the stuff that their forefathers knew. You remember, Job is an old book, and it's deliberately written to sound old, even in its day. It was meant to evoke the sense of being a long ago story from a faraway place. And even in this story, these characters who are old, okay, go back to before Moses' time, if not before, and as far back as the Bible itself as a written document exists. Even these characters are saying this is old knowledge, this is traditional wisdom, this is what our fathers knew, this is what our forefathers knew. But it's not necessarily true. God does not necessarily always materially bless the righteous in this life, and does not always necessarily materially bless or curse the wicked. A form of this message that's preached today is the prosperity gospel. So this line of thinking, despite being wrong, despite not being right, despite all 4 of these men thinking this way and all of them being wrong with that assumption, and despite that not being a new thought in their day, despite this being potentially the oldest book in the Bible, certainly it's meant to sound like it's the oldest book in the Bible, and even the characters in the book are saying that this is old wisdom that people have known forever, and even in their own day and time. This line of thinking, which is incorrect, has never gone away. And we still have it to this day in our church circles in the form of the prosperity gospel. So all 4 of these guys essentially believe in a version of the prosperity gospel. The idea that if you are righteous, if you follow God, your life will be materially blessed and you'll be prosperous in this life. That may happen, or it may not. God does not necessarily always materially bless the righteous, and does not necessarily always materially condemn the wicked. And when he does, these things may or may not happen in our sight and in our lifetime. We may not get the satisfaction in this life of seeing the righteous rewarded and the wicked punished. We might. It's nice when we do, but we cannot be certain of that. All 4 of these men think that. So the heart of their debate is that Job is being punished for something that he must have done wrong. He must have brought this upon himself in some way. Now, for the 3 accusers, it's important for them to think this, because that shields them from experiencing the same thing Job has experienced. It's important to their beliefs and their worldview and their thoughts about themselves and the world that they live in, and their thoughts about God, that their thinking has to be correct. Because otherwise, they could be vulnerable to something like this happening to them too. And for Job, the fact that this has happened and he doesn't understand why is causing him to undergo all of this emotional strain and trauma. So they're going back and forth, and that argument is done. And now that the 3 men have basically run out of things to say, because all of them have basically tried to get Job to admit that he's guilty, to confess to the things that he's guilty of. In the end, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to get Job to confess to whatever hidden sin that he must have been harboring in his life that led to this. They could not do that. Job has not confessed any such thing. So they're basically done talking, because that was ultimately what they wanted to have happen. And they didn't get that to happen, so now they're basically done speaking. And Job is going to go on now and give a thorough defense of himself. And then he's going to be done speaking, basically. So he's silenced his friends. They've run out of things to say because they have not been able to get Job to admit to any wrongdoing. And so Job is going to take the opportunity here not only to kind of win this argument, but to press his case even further of his own innocence. And then after Job is done talking, someone else is going to show up and start talking. We'll talk about that when we get there. Then Job replied. Wait, actually, I already read that. That was chapter Job 26. That was the last response to Bildad, who had a few things to say in chapter 25. We're moving on from that. This is Job 27. This is Job continuing his discourse, now stating and professing his innocence once for all. This is going to go on for a few chapters. Job 27, starting in verse 1. Job continued his discourse. As surely as God lives, who has denied me justice, the Almighty, who has made me taste bitterness of soul, as long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils. Remember, the breath, God breathed the breath of life into the nostrils of Adam, and Adam became a living being, the man, the human, Adam, the generic human, back in the very beginning. And so that is what animates man. The breath of God itself is what gives man life, what animates the living creatures of creation. Now, we didn't read about him breathing the breath of life in anything other than man, but it's the breath of God that gives life to a living creature. We would basically call that the soul. In our way of thinking, we can identify that as the soul. I believe in Hebrew the soul is referred to as the nephesh. It's basically like an imprint of your existence. It's not really your spirit. It's basically the animated force that makes you a living being. We would call that the soul. That, I believe, is what God breathed into man when he breathed into his nostrils, and he became a living being. As long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, and my tongue will utter no deceit. So he is, by the way, before I move on, one day he will not have the breath of God in his nostrils. When he dies, the breath will go out. The breath of God does not animate our physical bodies forever. There will come a day when we will not have life within us, and the breath of God will not be in our nostrils, will not be in our lungs. Anyway, as long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, and my tongue will utter no deceit. I will never admit you are in the right. That's what they've been trying to get him to admit. All throughout this conversation, since Job 4, basically, when Eliphaz started talking in response to Job's opening lament in Job 3, they've been trying to get him to admit to some form of hidden sin they didn't know about, and no one has known about. Only Job has known about. Because they believe that is what is causing his problems. And to them, they have to believe that, because that means they're not susceptible to the same problem. As long as they avoid Job's mistake, what happened to Job won't happen to them. And so they want to believe that Job is responsible for this, because that then gives them control over their own fates. If they can just not do what Job did, this won't happen to them. If what happened to Job is just a matter of random chance, then it could happen to them too. Now, the readers know there's more going on behind the scenes here. None of the characters in the book of Job are aware of the opening scenes that we read about in Job 1 and 2. So they're all operating from a position of ignorance because they don't know what's actually going on. And they're all also operating under wrong assumptions about the way God runs the world, too. So I will never admit that you are in the right. Until I die, until the breath of God leaves me, I will not deny my integrity. I will maintain my righteousness and never let go of it. My conscience will not reproach me as long as I live. May my enemies be like the wicked. Now, I don't know if he's calling them his enemies now, or he's just speaking in general terms here. Have they become so hostile to him that he now regards them as his enemies? I don't know. My adversary is like the unjust. For what hope has the godless when he is cut off, when God takes away his life? Does God listen to his cry when distress comes upon him? Will he find delight in the Almighty? Will he call upon God at all times? I will teach you about the power of God. The ways of the Almighty I will not conceal. You have all seen this yourselves. Why then this meaningless talk? So Job's going to tell them a lesson, in other words. He's going to tell them a thing or two about this God fellow. Here is the fate God allots to the wicked, the heritage a ruthless man receives from the Almighty. However many his children, and Job had 10 of them, but however many a wicked man has, their fate is the sword. His offspring will never have enough to eat. The plague will bury those who survive him, and their widows will not weep for them. Though he heaps up silver like dust, and clothes like piles of clay. So he has lots of stuff. He gets lots and lots of stuff. What he lays up, the righteous will wear. So he's not going to end up getting to use it. Someone else will. And the innocent will divide his silver. The house he builds is like a moth's cocoon, like a hut made by a watchman, a temporary shelter or dwelling place that is abandoned as soon as it's no longer needed. He lies down wealthy, but will do so no more. When he opens his eyes, all will be gone. Terrors overtake him like a flood. A tempest snatches him away in the night. The east wind, remember that's the hot, dry desert wind. The east wind carries him off and he is gone. It sweeps him out of his place. It hurls itself against him without mercy, as he flees headlong from its power. It clasps its hands in derision. It claps its hands in derision. And hisses him out of his place. There is a mine for silver, and a place where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth, and copper is smelted from ore. Man puts an end to the darkness. He searches the farthest recesses for ore in the blackest darkness. So basically he's going into caves and holes and tunnels to look for valuable minerals. And they must have had torches or lanterns of some kind that allowed them to see in the darkness of these places. They wouldn't have had like fancy headlights or flashlights or whatever they use today. But they would have had fire, they would have had torches, they would have had something to light their way as they went into the caves and the mines and the tunnels to look for precious minerals. Far from where people dwell, he cuts a shaft, in places forgotten by the foot of man. So he'll go wherever he needs to go to find these precious minerals, as far away from civilization as he needs to go to find them. Far from men he dangles and sways. I think here he's talking about being like in a tunnel or a shaft and being suspended in a harness or something like that they make as they dig on the rocks. Remember, this is old stuff here. We're talking about ancient mining techniques from 3,500 plus years ago. I don't know how that equates to mining techniques today or any time in our more recent times. We're talking about an era a long, long time ago when men went hunting for precious rocks in dark caves and crevices. The earth from which food comes is transformed below as by fire. Sapphires come from its rocks, and its dust contains nuggets of gold. No bird of prey knows that hidden path. No falcon's eye has seen it. Proud beasts do not set foot on it. No lion prowls there. So the animals stay away from these places. They don't go where men go to find their precious minerals. Man's hand assaults the flinty rock and lays bare the roots of the mountains. He tunnels through the rock. His eyes see all its treasures. He searches the sources of the rivers and brings hidden things to light, or dams up the sources of the rivers. But where can wisdom? So they didn't know, for example, where the source of the Nile River was for a long, long time. You know, it took them many centuries to track the Nile River all. Actually, the Nile has a couple of different sources. Because the Nile, as we know, is made up of a couple of different rivers that join together as they flow northward to the Mediterranean Sea. But so there's always been some mystery about the source of a river. Where do these rivers actually start? Where do they come from? These great rivers, how far back do you have to trace them before you find the spot where they begin? But where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man doesn't. It's not in the caves. Is it in the caves? We'll go to the depths of the earth to find our precious minerals, to find our golds and our golds and our diamonds and our topaz and our sapphires. We'll dangle from ropes above bottomless shafts as we chip out precious rocks from the stone. But is that where we can find wisdom? Is that where we can find understanding? Where can we find that? That's the real treasure. We'll go to the ends of the earth to find our made-up treasure, but where can we find real treasure? Where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man does not comprehend its worth. It cannot be found in the land of the living. The deep says, "It is not in me." The sea says, "It is not with me." It cannot. So the deepest, darkest places you can think of, the bottom of the ocean, the deepest, darkest tunnels you can even imagine, that you can't find them there. You can't find wisdom there. It cannot be bought with the finest gold, nor can its price be weighed in silver. It cannot be bought with the gold of Ophir, with precious onyx or sapphires. Neither gold nor crystal can compare with it, nor can it be had for jewels of gold. Coral and jasper are not worthy of mention. The price of wisdom is beyond rubies. The topaz of Cush, which is Ethiopia, by the way, cannot compare with it. It cannot be bought with pure gold. So all that trouble we go through to find the gold and the rubies and the topaz and the sapphires and every precious mineral we can think of hidden in the depths of the earth, all the danger we put ourselves through, we go through, all the trouble we go through, all the danger we put ourselves in to find this stuff, it's still, I mean, you're not going to find wisdom there, you're not going to find understanding there, and those are the real treasures. All those minerals that we get out of those shafts and those tunnels aren't going to be enough to buy the real treasure of wisdom and understanding. And you're not going to find those things by hunting in a cave. Then, where then does wisdom come from? Where does understanding dwell? It is hidden from the eyes of every living thing, concealed even from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say. Now that word destruction there goes back, is the word Abaddon, or however you pronounce it. And that refers to like the worst of the worst. When you go to the grave, everybody goes to the grave, which is Sheol, that's death. But Abaddon means destruction, decay. It's like once you're dead and you're gone, you're gone. It's like it's even worse than death, it's destruction. Destruction and death say, only a rumor of it has reached our ears. God understands the way to it, and he alone knows where it dwells. For he views the ends of the earth, and sees everything under the heavens. When he established the force of the wind, and measured out the waters, when he made a decree for the rain and a path for the thunderstorm, then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it. And he said to man, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding. We're going to read about this again later on in Proverbs, when the writer of Proverbs also talks about wisdom in the act of God's creation of the world. Job continued. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and stop and make a new video.